Oh, Ishani, can you play? Hello, Ishani. I'm not feeling well. So is it possible? Okay. Hello. Hello, Ishani, তুমি প্রেয়ারটা করবে? Oh, Ishani not here. Okay. Om Shahana Bhavatu Shahano Hunaktu Shahubirjam Karvavahai Tejashinaavati Tamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So Anindita, you will take class, right?
Yes, sir.
So may I make you host?
Yes.
Okay, now you are host.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So before we get into what we're going to look at today, we're just going to quickly brush through what we saw in last class. So what are the various parts of converting a raw score into some kind of standard score? What are the various types that we saw in last session?
Score, Z-score, and STEM score.
Yeah, so we looked at Z-score, T-scores, STEN and STANN. Yeah.
Norms and criterion before that.
Yeah, we looked at norm and criterion as well, right? So we looked into all of those details. So we are going to move on to percentile and percentile rank today. So I just have a question. What do you think is the difference between percentile and percentile rank? Have you heard of these two terms being used anywhere? Of course, we would know what percentile is, but percentile rank, have you heard that term being used before?
I've seen it in Excel. There's a formula, that's about it.
Absolutely. So is there any other difference that you can think of with regard to percentile and percentile? Or do you think it's the same thing?
That is where
Come again? Dharmi, I couldn't hear you properly. Can you repeat again?
the percentile is basically a comparison, like where the person stands and participants.
Okay, you're right about percentile. Yeah, yeah. So when we say percentile and percentile rank, I want you to understand that we're talking about calculating the same thing, right? But what we are differentiating here is that when we say percentile, it is the position or how many people are below this individual is what we say when we say percentile. But percentile rank is the position that they're holding. So if we say 25th percentile, we're talking about 25 being the percentile rank, and the 25% of people below this particular person is a percentile. So that's the very slight difference between all of these. Right, so I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Just give me a moment. Okay, can you all see the screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. So we're just going to talk about percentile and percentile rank. So as I said, percentile is talking about the raw score below which a particular percentage of the entire scores in the population fall, whereas percentile rank is the position that we assign. So when we say 25th percentile, 25th is the rank and 25% of the entire population falls below this particular score is the percentile assumption. So that's what we can see here. So if you just take this example here, we have this bunch of scores and we are trying to find which percentile 18 is falling under, right? And we can try and estimate that through a formula, which we'll get into in a minute. Okay. So when we say percentile, where do you think we see percentile being used? I think Dani, your signal is a little bit weak, so you might have to check your network. But that's all right. Shrishti, do you have any answers?
No, I'm just internalizing it.
Where do you think we use the percentile and percentile ranks with regard to testing or psychometry?
Percentile is
Yeah,
during the competitive exams, the marks.
exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So when we say percentile, it's most often used in competitive exams. So if we take the national eligibility test for teaching and lecturership, we can usually find the percentile being assigned there. That will give us the understanding of how the entire population has performed and where this individual stands within that entire population. And even the cutoff marks for all these competitive exams are determined by the percentile, right? And which part of this percentile has what kind of score is what is going to determine the cutoff mark as well that will make us pass or fail the competitive exams. So that's something for us to understand. Shrishti, does that make sense now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So percentile is something that we can see used very commonly across various kinds of methodology, various kinds of areas. And most often, as we discussed, we see it in these competitive exams. But apart from that, when we say testing and psychological testing, right, we can usually see it in various kinds of tools as well, right? So when we say various kinds of tools, we can also see it in intelligence tests. We can see it in certain kind of achievement tests, right? All of these things also have percentile as one of their norms or their estimation of an interpretation for your score, right? So this is something that we can see as the use of percentile. So essentially, when we say percentile, just to sum it up, it talks about the percentage of the population that stands below that particular score that we're talking about, right? So that's something that we are trying to calculate. So when I talk about percentile, I think we talked about it in last class as well. Does it come under norm referenced or does it come under criterion referenced?
Criterion.
Criterion? Are you
No,
sure?
no, norm. So norm, yeah. Criterion is very, you have an external norm and we have an external benchmark for
Yes.
norms. It's, we can take percentile.
Exactly. So when we say norm reference, we're simply talking about how the entire population and the comparison of performance within the population is going to determine these positions, right? So that's the reason why these cutoff marks for all these competitive exams keep changing, because depending on how the entire population performs, we're going to take off a particular percentile as the cutoff mark. And this percentile can be different based on the entire population's performance and not just some already set criteria. So this is the reason why all these cutoff marks keep changing. All right, now moving on to the next one. This is what we already talked about. So when we say percentile, I want you to look into the last point here. Percentile is calculated by the ratio of the number of values below x to the total number of values. So what we talk about here is it is the ratio of the number of values below a particular score divided by the total number of values. So let's say we have 6 numbers and we are looking at a particular number amongst that. We're going to look at how many scores fall under that particular number. Let's say, for example, 3 scores fall under that number, and we have a total set of data as 6. So it's going to be 3 divided by 6 that will give us the percentile. Right? For percentile rank, there's a little bit extra step that we need to do, which we'll look into it in a little bit. Okay. So when we talk about this x, the x is what we are going to use as the reference point to say this is the point from which the percentile is this much, right? So when we say x here, we're talking about the point of reference that will help us determine which percentile this particular score is falling under and how much of the population is falling below this particular score, right? Moving on to the next one. So we just saw about how to determine the percentile, right? Percentile is nothing but the number of values below that particular score divided by the total number of scores. That's what we said. So for percentile rank, we're going to use this particular formula, right? Which is percentile divided by 100 into n plus 1. Right? So percentile divided by 100 into n plus 1, when we follow this for this particular example, right? We have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right? So let's say we're going to try and understand the percentile rank of 8 here. So how many values are below 8 in this particular sequence? 3. Exactly. So there are 3 values below 8 in this particular sequence. So when we say the number of values below the score, it's going to be 3. How much is the total number of values here? It is 6. So 3 divided by 6 is what we get as the percentile. So to calculate the percentile rank, it is 3 divided by 6 into 100, that we'll calculate here, into n plus 1. So when we do that particular calculation, as you can see here, we get this value of 0.03. So when we say 0.03, we're talking about it being the 3rd percentile rank. Right? Does that make sense to you? Are you able to follow along with me? Are you able to follow along with me?
N is the number.
Yeah, n is the total.
Represented by number of scores in the list.
Yeah. So n is the total, that is clearly seen here, right? So we can see all of this. So that is what we're calculating here as well. Okay, so we got the 3rd percentile rank. Okay. So when we say 3rd percentile, it means that 3% of the population falls below the score 8. Right? 3% of the population is falling below the score of 8 out of the entire 6. So can we move on to the next one?
Yes,
Okay, awesome. So this is a concept that I want to explain to you all again so that we can get a little familiarized with this, that we can move into the practicum for calculating percentile score. So cumulative distribution. So we know something as distribution, right? Frequency distribution. I hope you're all familiar with that word. Yes. So frequency distribution is nothing but where you have class intervals and you have certain frequency of numbers occurring within that class interval for a particular distribution. So cumulative frequency distribution or cumulative distribution is nothing but how the frequencies add up across the various class intervals. right? So if when you look at this particular example here, you can clearly see that there's a repetition of these numbers, right? So when I say from 0.5 to 1.5 is a class interval, we have the frequency 2, and 1.5 to 2.5, we have the frequency 3. So when I'm saying cumulative distribution, we're going to look into as 2 plus 3. So when I say cumulative distribution of the class interval up till 2.5, my cumulative frequency is going to be 5. Right? So this is what we already understand. It's a basic understanding of statistics. Yes. So this is something I want you all to keep in mind, because we are going to use this when we are trying to calculate our percentile score and percentile rank. Okay. Right. So this is what we need to understand. Let's say we have a set of scores, right? We're now going to get all these class intervals when we talk about our raw scores, right? We're just going to collect these totals from our subjects, and we need to organize it into these class intervals. Am I correct? Shrishti, Dani, anybody there?
Yes.
Yeah. So when we say we need to organize them into class intervals and class limits, we're going to have to take into consideration what is the minimum score and what is the maximum score, right? That's something we need to take into consideration. So I'm just going to share the sheet so that we can all work on this together step by step. I'll just keep switching between the two screens, right? So just a moment. Are you able to see this? So we've collected certain scores for a test, right? These are all the various scores that we've collected. And we have all of these individuals that are a part of this particular test. So to calculate, let's say, percentile 75, right? P75. Let's say this is what we want to calculate. I'm just going to leave it here so that we can aim towards this. Right? In order for us to calculate P75, we need to first understand what is the minimum score and what is the maximum score. So if you look into this particular frequency distribution or just the data here, we can see that the minimum score is 2 and the maximum is 11, right? Are you all able to follow?
Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Awesome. So we are now going to determine our own class intervals based on the minimum and the maximum, right? So you can determine how your frequency distribution is going to be depending on how much intervals that you would like to have. So I'm going to choose that we are going to have 4 class intervals here, right? We're going to have 4 class intervals where our minimum is going to be 2 scores. So it should be included in one of your class intervals. So my minimum point is going to be 1.5 to, let's say, we'll keep it 3.5, right? So my next class interval is going to be from 3.5 to 6.5. My next class interval will be from 6.5 to 9.5. And then finally 9.5 to 12.5. Does that make sense? So this is our class interval that I've just decided to fit into this data. Yes?
Ananta, here, should the class intervals be continuous or discontinuous? Anything is fine.
Continuous would be ideal so that you can calculate your cumulative frequency and you can distribute your frequency very easily. if you
Yeah.
have continuous. If there is discontinuous, you have to do all that calculation to make it continuous again. So
Okay.
that doesn't make sense,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So we can just start off with a continuous class interval. The number of intervals that you're assigning can be up to your choice. I am assigning like this for my ease of understanding. Okay?
All right. Thank you.
So now we're going to assign the frequency. I'm typing it as capital F here. Right. So what are the frequencies that we have from 1.5 to 3.5? How many do we have? We have 1 and 2. Yes, just 2. From 3.5 to 6.5, how many do we have? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Right? So we have 8 under our second class interval. Our third class interval is from 6.5 to 9.5. So we're going to take into account all the 7s and 8s, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So we have 9 as the class interval for, frequency for the third class interval. And finally, from 9.5 to 12.5, there's only 1, right? There's only 11 left in the entire distribution. So I'm going to type it as 1 here. So what we're going to do right now is we're going to calculate the cumulative frequency. So what do we do for cumulative frequency?
So we'll add for the next interval, we'll add the previous one. So the next
Exactly.
second row would be 2 plus 8.
Yeah, which is 10, right? And then here will be
19.
Yeah, and then
20.
20, right? So just for your quick checking, you can check whether your class interval, cumulative class interval's final value is equal to the number of subjects that you have. So if I select the number of subjects here entirely, I'm getting the count as 20 here. Can you see? So therefore, I should get the end result of my cumulative frequency as my number of subjects, right? That's just for your verification to ensure that you've done the calculation right. So what we're going to do next is the cumulative frequency percentage. So when I say CF percentage, what we're going to see is how much percentage does this particular frequency occupy out of the entirety, right? So totally we have 20 subjects, right? So when I'm saying cumulative frequency percentage, it's going to be 2 divided by 20 into 100, right? Yes.
Yeah.
Anindita,
two
you
divided-
write equal to sign.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm just
Then it will
teaching them
come.
so that they can see this
Oh,
entire
okay.
value.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
Yes, sir. So when we say 2 divided by 20 into 100 is what we're going to do to calculate the CF. So here, when we talk about 2 divided by 20, it is how much? It is 10%, is it not? Totally. Yes. And obviously, when we say the cumulative frequency is 10, our percentage is going to be 50%. And when it's 19, it is going to be 95%. And then again, this is going to be 100%. Are you able to follow with me? Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. So we're going to now figure out the next column here, which is going to be your upward limit. It'll all make sense when we are talking about why we are calculating all of these things in a little bit, because I'm going to tell you the formula in a little bit. So we're just finding all of these things so that we can directly substitute it in our formula, right? So our upper limit for each of the class interval, what is the upper limit for the first one? What is it?
3.5.
Yeah, so it's 3.5.
6.5.
Just give me a moment. I will be right back. Right. So we are going to type in our upper limit as 3.5. Then here it is 6.5. Here it will be 9.5. And here it will be 12.5. So now that we have found out all of these brilliant values, we're now going to make sense of why we found them out, right? So why we found them out is nothing but the entire formula for calculating percentile rank. Let's keep it as P, right, is equal to L, sorry, small l plus, let's open the bracket here. Right. Here, when we say Tn, sorry, we're talking about the percentile, right, minus capital F, let's close the bracket, divided by FP, let's close the next bracket, into I. Let's make sense of this formula together right now. So L is nothing but your upper class limit. Okay, L is nothing but your upper class limit. All right, and I here stands for your class interval. Class interval is nothing but the difference between your higher and the lower limits of your class interval each, right? So that is I, and F is nothing but your cumulative frequency here that I've mentioned as capital F. Just for your understanding, I'm writing here. It is your cumulative frequency. And then we have FP, which is nothing but the frequency of the interval where you're calculating the percentile. Right? So that's FP. What else do we have as a term here? That's all, right? We have PN. So that's what we need to find out right now. PN is nothing but your percentile, right? Percentile, if you remember what we just spoke about, what is the formula to find out the percentile? It is the number of values below that particular score divided by the total number of values, right? So here we are trying to find out P75, right? So if we try to find P75, it's nothing but 75% of the 20 people, right? Because we are trying to find out what this 75th percentile would be. Are you all following along with me on this?
Yes, yes.
Yes. So therefore, P75 is nothing but 75% of 20. And how many people would that be? Right. So can anyone calculate what is the 75% of 20 people?
15.
50. Very good. So it is 15 people. So now let's just substitute all of this into a formula here. Just follow along with me on this. So P 75 is equal to, what do we have there? L, right? What is the upper class limit here? L. 75 is 15, right? So for us to understand where 15 falls, we need to understand where is the cumulative frequency of 15 come under, right? The previous cumulative frequency is 10. So obviously 15 will not come under this. Here we have 19. So obviously 15 falls between 10 and 19, right? So we're going to consider this class interval. So here we're going to consider this upper class limit. So L will be how much? What will be L here?
It will be 6 point.
The upper class limit here, which is
9.5.
9.5. Exactly. So 9.5, right? 9.5 plus what do we have next? Pn, which is 15, right? Let's open the bracket. 15, right? Minus what is F here? Cumulative frequency of that particular class interval is 19.
19.
Yes, 19. Right, divided by what is FP for us, frequency of the interval here, 9. Yes, this is the cumulative frequency here, 19, and this is the actual frequency. So we get it as 9. I close the bracket here into what is I? Can we calculate I? (3.5) minus 1.5 is what? Yeah. So that is our class interval. Okay, does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Shrishti?
Yes.
Right. So I'm just going to why my computer is not responding. I don't understand. Yeah. So 2. So this is what we will have to calculate. Can you quickly calculate this and let me know what the answer is?
$10.38.
10.38. Can you please redo the calculation? What do we have here? (9.5) should be added toward the end. Okay, so we have to figure out this entire term and then we have to add 9.5 to it.
Yeah, 10.38.
Come again?
10.38.
10.38. How come I'm getting a different answer? Okay, 15 minus 9 is 19 is minus
Minus
4, right? Minus 4 divided by 9 is minus 0.44,
Yeah.
right? That into 2 is 0.88, right?
Yes.
So 9.5 minus 0.88. How much is that? How much are we getting?
So is it 9.5 minus 0.88 or 9.5 plus 0.88?
Minus, because we have the minus difference here, right? 15 minus 19 is a negative score, yes? So what is 9.5 minus 0.8?
8.62. 8.
Exactly. So it is 8.62. Right? So this is our percentile. Right? Now we have to find out percentile rank. Okay. So for percentile rank, what we have to do is we have to calculate the number of people that fall below this. Right? So I'm just going to make it clear for you. This is percentile. Right? We're going to now calculate percentile rank. Yes, for percentile rank, we need to calculate how many people are going to fall below a particular score, right? And for this, if you remember, we already calculated using a formula. We already discussed a formula a little while ago, which is what is the formula that we already discussed?
Percentile by 100 into n plus 1.
Yes, yes, right. So we're going to try and go ahead with the same thing. Just a moment, I'm facing an issue. Yeah. So what we're going to do right now is that we're going to use a particular formula here to understand what the percentile rank is going to be, right? So for this, what we'll be using is nothing but the frequency that we have at that particular interval. Okay, I'm just going to write it as f minus the lower class limit. Let's type it out as lower limit itself, right? Divided by the class interval. Just a minute.
No sound is there, Anindita?
So I'm facing an issue. I'll be right back. So I'm facing a technical issue. My laptop is glitching. I'll be right back, sir.
Ishani, anything wrong?
No, sir, not with this account. I think Anindita individually, she is facing some issues. So she said she will be back.
So my Excel is glitching. I'm unable to share the screen now. So I think, can we continue it in our next class, sir?
Yes, Anindita, we would like to continue in the next class. That's what you are saying.
Yes, yes.
Okay, yeah. So Srishti, Dharani Dharan, can we just carry on the topic in the next class?
No problem.
I think we've calculated till percentile, right? We just need to calculate percentile rank. That's just a very small step that we need to figure out, which we'll figure out very quickly. Okay, so we'll just take maybe 10 minutes in our next class to figure this out. Will that be okay?
Perfect.
And let them remind also about the presentation.
Yeah, so I've already told you all about the presentation in the last class. We will do
Yes.
a psychometric analysis of a tool of your choice, where you will talk about all of the things we've discussed so far, right? So we will talk about that tool's item construction, the kind of scales or the kind of method they've used to get the scores.
Yeah.
We're going to look
Hello.
into. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Hello, sir.
So we're going to look into all of those details, and you will be choosing a tool of your own, and you will be presenting these details to us. You're also going to talk about the reliability and validity and what these values that are presented mean here, and what kind of reliability and validity have been used as well. All right.
Yes. So you will be sharing like a outline in terms of what is expected after the presentation, right?
Yeah, it's just the gist of whatever we've spoken so far, all the topics that
Sure.
we've spoken so far.
All right.
You'll just look at a tool in that particular light and you will explain what you see with regard to the concepts that you've learned.
Sure.
Davni, is that okay with you?
Yeah, okay.
Awesome. So Monday, so on Monday, we'll just take 10 minutes to explain percentile ranking in that particular exercise. And then we'll get into your presentations. All right?
Yes.
Okay, you have understood the application of the percentile. Srishti Dhanajaran,
Yes, sir.
is it clear? That is where we can apply the percentile rank.
Yes, sir. We discussed that also. Anandita ma'am
In
explained.
case of the competitive test, right? So when,
During competitive.
when our purpose is to select the candidate based upon the large number of test scores, and then we can think about the percentile rank. Okay. So Anindita, we like to close now.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so please close your hands. Purnamada Purnamidam Purna Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Okay, good night.
Thank you.
Anindita, you are the host, so you can end it.
Yes, sir.